Ink beneath the salt. In a conservative coastal town, a pastor's daughter secretly commissions a sleeve tattoo from the new artist in town. Chapter 1, Low Tide, High Stakes. Megan Lowe had learned the tides before she learned the Psalms. At dawn, Low Haven's shore wore a ribbon of fog, the fishing boats hunched like old men in prayer, and gulls arguing with the wind over bait crusted into the dock. Her father said the sea reminded him of God, vast, ungovernable, demanding attention. Megan thought the sea reminded her of breath, in, out, in, out. The only rhythm that was hers. She walked the length of Harbor Street with a tote bag and a lie. The tote held cash she'd saved from tutoring and the careful notes she'd been sketching for months in the margins of hymnals, fern fronds unfurling, a lighthouse spiraled with storm, a constellation of tiny black swifts. The lie was for herself, that this was research, curiosity, something she'd explain away as a phase if anyone asked. No one would. No one asked the pastor's daughter much of anything that wasn't a prayer request or a casserole preference. At the end of the street, where the bait shop's paint peeled like sunburn, a new sign leaned into the morning, brackish INK. The letters were hand-painted, imperfect, alive. The windows wore a film of salt and promise. Through the glass she could see a single chair, a toolbox, and a woman kneeling on a drop cloth painting waves directly onto the floor. Short, black hair. Muscular forearms inked in delicate line work, cormorants, a compass, a ring of hyacinths around a healed scar. The woman looked up, squinting through the reflection. She smiled like someone who'd been waiting without admitting it. "Open in 10, she called, voice warm and a little rough. "Unless you're here to tell me the zoning board hates fun." Megan's mouth went dry. I'm here for a consult." "Even better." The woman rose, wiped blue-gray paint off her palm with the hem of her shirt and then seemed to remember herself, grabbing a rag instead. "I'm Toby." Of course you are, Megan thought, the name fit like a knife in a leather sheath. She opened the door, the bell chiming a hopeful note. The place smelled of citrus cleaner and salt, with a ghost of metal and ink underneath. A shelf held sketchbooks and sea glass in a jar. On the wall, a framed photograph of a storm, lightning striking water like a stitch. "I'm Megan," she said, setting her tote down. "From town." "Everyone here is from town until they aren't." Toby's grin tilted. "Show me what you've got." Megan pulled out her notebook with hands that didn't feel like hers. Page after page spilled across the counter, ferns climbing her wrist like green fire, a lighthouse spliced with swallows, tiny constellations strung along her forearm in points of black. Toby's face changed as she turned the pages, amusement, interest, then something like respect. "You drew these?" "Mostly at choir practice." "That explains the swallows behaving." Toby tapped a sketch with a calloused finger. "You know what you want?" Megan's pulse found a new rhythm, fast, bright, reckless. A full sleeve. From wrist to shoulder. Nothing that reads from the pews unless you stare. Something that feels like Low Haven, but the version that doesn't ask me to keep shrinking. Toby's eyes flicked to the window, where Harbor Street pretended not to listen. When she looked back, her gaze was steady, not unkind. "That's a lot of ink for a first piece." "I'm aware." "Parents okay with this?" Toby asked it casually, like weather. "My father will call it vandalism of the body." Megan smiled a little, the kind that hurt. "He thinks God designed us perfectly. I think God also designed octopi and lightning and the way ferns refuse to uncurl on command." Toby laughed, then gentled. "All right, fern girl. We can build a sleeve in movements. Wrist to mid-forearm first, test the waters. If you don't faint, we keep climbing." "I don't faint." "We'll see." Toby flipped to a blank page and began to draw, the pencil whispering like a tide. "Tell me the story you want under your skin." Megan told her. About tide charts and choir rehearsals, about the lighthouse lens the museum kept in a glass case and the first time she stood in front of it alone. About the way she'd traced the hairline cracks with her eyes while tourists read plaques, And how she'd imagined a map not of streets or family names but of the secret places where she could still breathe. Toby sketched as if catching the words before they vanished. When she turned the pad around, Megan swallowed hard. Ferns braided with ropework. Swifts curved in a loose helix like a blessing. The lighthouse not as a warning, but as a spine, a column of light. "It'll take 3 sessions," Toby said, businesslike again. "For if I fall in love with my own line work." Megan reached into the tote. "I brought a deposit." "I trust you." Toby slid the money back toward her without looking. "What I need is a time." Megan checked the church calendar in her head. Bells on Wednesday, Bible study Tuesday, Dad's office hours until 6. Tonight. After sundown. Toby arched a brow. Secret? Necessary. Toby's smile didn't gloat, it accepted. "Come at 8. Doors will be locked." Knock twice, then once. "Like a speakeasy?" "Like a choice." Toby capped the pencil, eyes holding Megan's a fraction too long. "You sure you want to make it?" The bell over the door chimed when Megan left, and the harbor air hit her like a benediction and a dare. She walked past the bait shop, the church, the sandwich board outside the general store that read fresh fudge/prayer meeting tonight. Her father's voice drifted out of the chapel as she passed, warm and certain, deciphering the book of Jonah for a congregation that feared storms but adored whales. Megan paused on the steps. The tide was low enough to expose the secret path between rocks, a ribbon of wet sand only the locals knew to trust. She stood there longer than she meant to, palms damp, heart wild, trying to decide if the sea sounded like warning or applause. At 8 o'clock, she knocked twice, then once. Chapter 2, Ink and Revelation. The bell above the door chimed once. The shop smelled of rain-soaked pavement and the faint sting of disinfectant. Toby had dimmed the lights, a desk lamp spotlighting her workspace like a confession booth. "You came," she said, her voice softer than the first time. "I said I would." Toby nodded toward the chair. "Then sit." Left arm, sleeve rolled. Megan climbed into the chair, pulse hammering. Outside, the harbor whispered with the tide, the world unaware that a pastor's daughter was about to be rewritten. Toby prepped her arm with care, cool wipes, black gloves, the quick buzz of the machine coming to life. "This'll hurt," she warned. "I know." "Good. Pain keeps you present." Megan nodded, gripping the chair arms. "Go ahead." The first touch of the needle was lightning, sharp, shocking, beautiful. Toby's other hand was steady, grounding her through the ache. The sound filled the room, a low hum like a bee inside a jar. "Breathe," Toby murmured. "Don't hold it. The body needs to move with the ink." So she did. She breathed, and with each exhale something uncoiled in her chest, fear, expectation, the small, constant voice that told her who she was supposed to be. Toby worked in silence for a while, focused and deliberate. Megan watched her face in the reflection of the glass, brow furrowed, jaw relaxed, eyes intent. She was an artist sculpting freedom, one drop of ink at a time. When Toby paused to clean the skin, Megan whispered, "How long have you been doing this?" 10 years. Started in a city that eats artists for breakfast. And you left? I burned out. Came here because no one knows my name. Yet. Toby smirked. You? Born here. Dying here, probably. Don't sound so sure. Megan smiled faintly. Low Haven doesn't forgive deviation. That's not forgiveness. That's control. The words landed deep. Toby returned to her work, and Megan felt the truth burn just as sharply as the needle. An hour later, Toby leaned back and switched off the machine. First layer done. Look. Megan glanced down. Black ferns curved up her wrist, delicate as lace, curling into the first hint of a lighthouse beam. It was raw and beautiful, something alive trying to climb out of her skin. Her voice failed. It's me. Toby smiled, eyes soft now. Yeah. I thought so. Megan reached out, almost touching her wrist, then stopped. Can I ask you something? Anything. Do you believe people can be good and still want something that isn't holy? Toby studied her, unreadable. I believe people can be good and still be human. That's not what my father says. Your father preaches from fear. Artists preach from scars. Megan laughed quietly. That sounds blasphemous. Good art always is. When she left, the streets were slick and glimmering. She walked home under the hum of streetlights, sleeve pulled down, skin singing. The church was dark, but her father's office light still burned behind frosted glass. His silhouette moved, tidy, rhythmic, unshakable. Megan hesitated at the gate. For the first time, she didn't feel small watching him through the window. She felt separate. Still his daughter, but no longer his echo. The tide crashed somewhere in the distance, carrying its usual warning, but tonight she heard something else beneath it. A heartbeat. Hers. And beneath that, quieter still, the low hum of the tattoo machine, marking her as something new. Chapter 3, The Second Session. Low Haven ran on gossip, caffeine, and ritual. Megan had learned to smile through all three. Sunday came with the usual choreography, pressing the iron dress, tuning the choir piano, pretending the pulse under her sleeve wasn't singing a secret hymn. The tattoo was healing well. Too well. Each morning she traced it lightly before pulling her sleeve down again, feeling the faint ridges like a whispered rebellion against everything tidy in her father's sermons. When service ended, she stayed late to help with cleanup. Someone asked her to lead next week's hymn. Someone else told her she had her mother's patience. No one noticed that her wrist was wrapped in gauze, or that her eyes wandered toward the window every time a motorcycle passed on the street outside. That evening, the phone buzzed, a number she didn't know. Toby, how's the fern? Megan hesitated, then typed, alive. A beat later. Toby, good. Round 2 tomorrow. If you're still breathing. Monday night, the shop glowed amber against the fog. Toby had music playing, something slow and haunting with a violin in it. She was tracing the outline of a new design when Megan entered. You came back, Toby said, without looking up. I said I would. That's becoming a pattern. I thought art liked repetition. Toby smiled at that, then motioned to the chair. Ready? As I'll ever be. Tonight's section climbed higher, over the curve of her forearm. Waves intertwined with ropework, the lighthouse base emerging beneath the ferns. The hum of the machine filled the quiet between them until Toby spoke, voice low but deliberate. You didn't tell me what this sleeve means yet. I did. It's about Low Haven. The parts no one else sees. That's geography, Toby said. Not story. Megan exhaled, watching her own blood bead and smear under the cloth. It's about becoming a place instead of trying to belong to one. That's better. Toby looked up, meeting her eyes briefly. You're writing yourself into the map. Megan's throat tightened. And you? What brought you to a place where time stands still? Toby shrugged, adjusting the machine. A girl, a bad breakup, a longing for salt air. Take your pick. Megan smiled faintly. You left her? She left first. I just took longer to notice. Does she know you still draw her on strangers? Toby froze, then laughed. That's sharp for a church girl. I'm observant. Dangerous combination. The machine buzzed again. Megan closed her eyes, letting the ache bloom. It wasn't pain anymore, it was translation, her heartbeat turned into ink. Halfway through the session, a storm rolled in. Rain hammered the windows, thunder rumbling over the harbor. Toby didn't stop. The tattoo machine became part of the storm's rhythm, two instruments in the same wild orchestra. Megan broke the silence. You ever think about faith? Toby's tone softened. Every time I start a new piece. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. Faith is trust in something invisible that still leaves a mark. Megan went still, every nerve awake. That sounds almost holy. Toby smiled, eyes glinting. Maybe holiness just got mislabeled. The storm surged, rattling the door. Megan laughed quietly. If my father saw me now, he'd call the lightning down, Toby said. Or try. Toby's hand steadied her wrist, careful, protective. Let him preach. You're allowed to live. When it was over, Toby wiped the skin gently, the new ink shining black and wet under the lamp. The lighthouse was visible now, its beam just beginning to cut through dark clouds of linework. Next time we do the shoulder, Toby said. That's where it gets personal. Megan looked up. How personal? Toby's eyes held hers a moment too long. You'll tell me. Outside, the rain softened to mist. Inside, the air between them stayed electric, quiet, dangerous, alive. Megan pulled her sleeve down and slipped out the door. She didn't look back, but she didn't have to. Toby's reflection followed her all the way down Harbor Street, glowing in every window she passed. Chapter 4, The Shoulder Session. By the time the third session came, the town had started to notice her absences. Her father mentioned it from the pulpit, careful, disguised as concern. We must be mindful, he said, voice honeyed but sharp, of how easily distraction wears the face of devotion. The congregation nodded. Megan smiled the practiced smile of the well-behaved and felt her pulse drum against the bandage hidden beneath her cuff. She'd begun to see brackish ink the way other people saw chapels, a place where the truth didn't echo back in accusation. The tide had shifted, she felt it every time she pushed open that door and smelled the faint mix of salt and antiseptic. Toby was waiting, sketchbook open, a streak of graphite on her jaw. You're early, she said. I didn't want to wait. Good. Toby stood, untying her apron. Because we're moving to the shoulder today. You sure? Megan tugged her sweater off, heart tripping. The air was cool against her skin. I've come this far. Then sit. Toby's fingers brushed the slope of her shoulder as she adjusted the stencil. The contact was professional, almost. Megan's breath stuttered anyway. This part hurts more, Toby warned. I don't mind. You always say that before you start shaking. Megan smiled, but it faltered when the needle touched down. The burn seared deeper here, closer to bone, but she didn't pull away. Toby's free hand rested steady on her collarbone, grounding her. Breathe, Toby murmured. You're stronger than the story they wrote for you. Megan's eyes fluttered shut. You keep saying things like that, and I'll start believing you. That's the point. The buzz filled the room again. Outside, gulls screamed above the docks. Inside, the air smelled of ink and salt and something unnamed. When Toby paused to wipe her skin, Megan whispered, You never talk about what you left behind. Nothing worth keeping. That's not true. Toby looked up. What makes you so sure? Because you build beautiful things, Megan said. People who destroy everything can't do that. Toby's gaze softened, and for a heartbeat, the distance between them vanished. You have no idea how dangerous you sound. I'm not trying to be dangerous. Then you're succeeding by accident. When the machine went quiet, Toby stepped back. Done for today. Megan glanced down. The beam of the lighthouse had become a burst of light reaching into a swirl of clouds, half the sleeve finished, the rest still a ghost of graphite. Toby cleaned the last trace of ink and wrapped her arm gently, fingers lingering a moment too long. You're almost there. Almost what? Unhidden. Megan looked at her, at the faint smear of black on Toby's wrist, the curve of her mouth, the way she said unhidden like it was a sacred word. She wanted to thank her. Instead, she reached up and touched Toby's jaw, smudging the graphite line into her skin. Toby froze. Megan. I'm not sorry, Megan said. The silence that followed was charged, fragile. Toby stepped closer, slow enough to give her time to change her mind. When their lips met, it wasn't fireworks. It was quiet recognition, the kind of kiss that rewrote gravity. When they broke apart, Toby's voice was low, rough. "You know what this means?" "Yes," Megan whispered. "That I can't go back." Toby exhaled, thumb tracing the edge of her bandage. "Then don't." Outside, the church bells began to ring for evening service. Inside, the pastor's daughter sat in the tattoo chair, her skin still raw, her heart finally open. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was rebelling. She felt like she was becoming. Chapter 5, The Discovery. The first whisper came from the church organist, Mrs. Klein, whose tongue was sharper than her high notes. She'd seen Megan down by the pier one night, sleeve rolled a little too high under the street light. The next morning, at Bible study, she mentioned it the way women in Low Haven mentioned the weather, softly, sweetly, with venom tucked between the syllables. By the end of the week, the story had grown legs, the pastor's daughter, staying out after dark, seen entering a den of sin near the docks. No one said tattoo parlor yet, but the words hung there, half-shaped, hungry. Megan felt it before she heard it. The way people lingered a second longer when she walked past. The curious smiles, the pitying looks. And her father's sudden silences, how he'd stop mid-sentence at dinner, study her face as if waiting for confession. She stopped eating in the church kitchen that week, stopped singing with the choir. She started walking home by the longer route, the one that passed the shore instead of Main Street. The sea at least didn't gossip. Toby noticed the change the moment Megan walked in. She looked thinner, eyes shadowed, hair pulled into a hurried braid. What happened? People talk. They always do. What are they saying? That I'm becoming my own sermon illustration. Toby set down her tools, crossed her arms. Tell me what you need. Megan blinked hard. I don't know. Maybe to not feel like I'm burning down my whole life. Toby stepped closer. Maybe that's how rebirth starts. That's easy for you to say. You don't have to see him every Sunday. Your father? Megan nodded, biting her lip. He's suspicious. He's been checking where I go, what I wear. He keeps saying my light is dimming. I don't even know what that means. It means he's losing control, Toby said quietly. Megan laughed through a breath that sounded more like a sob. He raised me to tell the truth. And now it's the only thing I can't say. Then say it here, Toby said. Say anything you need to say. Megan hesitated, the air between them charged and heavy. He says sin brands you. That it stains. But when I look at this, she lifted her arm, the inked lighthouse gleaming under the lamp, I don't see sin. I see proof. I see myself. Toby's expression softened. That's the most honest sermon I've ever heard. That night, after Megan left, the storm came again, one of those wild coastal tempests that made even the gulls hide. Toby stood in the doorway of brackish ink, watching the rain blur the streetlights. She should have been used to being the outsider by now. But Megan had made the town feel alive again, had made the whispers sting in a way they hadn't before. When the rain slowed, she saw movement through the glass, a figure under a black umbrella, staring at her window. Tall, broad-shouldered. Familiar. Toby froze. The man stepped forward into the light, Reverend Lowe. He didn't knock. He didn't need to. He just stood there, long enough to let her see recognition dawn in his eyes, before turning and walking away. Toby's stomach dropped. The next day, Megan arrived early. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking. He knows, she said. Toby's chest tightened. What did he say? Nothing. Yet. But he looked at me this morning like he was staring straight through me. Like I'd broken something sacred. Toby took her hands. You didn't break anything. You just stopped pretending. Megan's voice cracked. He's all I have. No, Toby's voice was firm now. You have yourself. And that's not small. Megan looked up, tears cutting through the salt on her cheeks. And you? Toby hesitated only a second. You have me too. Outside, the church bells began to toll. Inside, Megan reached for her again, and the sound of the world fell away. For the first time since she'd stepped into that shop, she didn't feel like she was hiding from God. She felt like she was finally meeting him, between breaths, between heartbeats, between the lines of ink and skin that said I am here. Chapter 6, The Confrontation. The call came just after sunset. Megan, her father said, voice controlled, the kind of calm that came before thunder. I'd like you to come to the church. My office. Now. She almost said she was busy, almost said no, but habit, the old reflex of obedience, answered for her. I'm on my way. The walk was short but felt like a pilgrimage to trial. The church sat dark except for the light behind his frosted window. She could see his silhouette even before she opened the door, hands clasped behind his back, the posture of a man delivering judgment from the altar. Sit, he said. Megan sat. I had a visit from someone today. His tone was even, polite. The new tattooist down by the docks. She didn't say much. Didn't have to. Megan's heart stuttered. What did she say? That she knows you. Megan gripped her knees. She does. She showed me her work. His eyes flicked to her sleeve. Recognizable, wouldn't you say? Megan rolled her sleeve up to the elbow. The ink shimmered faintly in the lamplight, black ferns, stormlight, defiance. It's mine. She didn't do anything wrong. You disfigured yourself. His voice rose, cracking through the restraint. Your body is God's work, not a canvas for rebellion. Megan's throat burned. You preach about creation every Sunday, about how he made the world from chaos. Why can't I make something from mine? This isn't creation, it's corruption. He slammed his hand on the desk, papers fluttering like startled birds. That woman, she's poisoned you. She showed me what faith feels like when it's real. Faith? He laughed, bitter and short. You call that faith? Hiding in back alleys, letting a stranger scar you? Megan stood, trembling but firm. You're confusing obedience with holiness. His face softened for a moment, almost sorrowful. You're my daughter. I still am. You're walking away from everything we've built. No, she said quietly. I'm just walking toward something you don't understand. He turned away, gripping the edge of his desk as though it were a pulpit. If you leave this church tonight, Megan, don't expect to walk back in. The words fell heavy, final. Megan swallowed, reached for the door, and paused. Then maybe the church was never the building. She stepped outside before her resolve could crack. The night air hit her like absolution, cold, clear, alive. She didn't remember walking to brackish ink. One moment she was under the church's shadow, the next she was pushing open Toby's door. Toby looked up from cleaning her station, eyes immediately searching her face. You told him. He knew. What happened? He asked me to choose. And? I did. Toby's jaw worked silently for a moment before she crossed the room and pulled her into her arms. Megan collapsed against her, shaking with something that was part grief, part relief. For a long time, they said nothing. The only sound was the tide outside, soft and endless, as if the sea itself had been waiting for this confession. You lost him, Toby murmured. No, Megan said. He lost me the moment he stopped believing I could belong to something bigger than fear. Toby cupped her face, thumbs brushing away the tears. You belong here. With yourself. With whoever you choose to love. Megan leaned into her touch. You make it sound easy. It isn't, Toby said. But it's real. Later, as they sat together by the window, the rain began again, thin, steady, patient. Megan rested her head on Toby's shoulder. Does it ever stop hurting? She asked. No, Toby said softly. It just becomes part of the art. Megan looked down at her arm, the ink glistening faintly under the shop light. Then finish it, she whispered. All the way to the top. Toby met her eyes. You're sure? Yes. Tomorrow. No, Megan said, voice steady. Now. Outside, the sea roared approval. Inside, the needle hummed to life. And when the first drop of ink touched her skin again, it didn't feel like rebellion anymore. It felt like resurrection. Chapter 7, The Completion. Dawn crept in gray and salt-stung, the kind of morning when the sea and the sky shared the same exhausted color. Brackish ink glowed like an ember in all that blue, warm, defiant, alive. Inside, Toby sat on the low stool, gloves snapped on, ink caps lined like communion cups. Megan's shoulder was bare now, the last blank stretch of skin above the lighthouse waiting to be claimed. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but steady. The air between them vibrated with fatigue, adrenaline, and something gentler, trust that had survived the night. This is it, Toby said quietly. No turning back. Megan smiled faintly. There never was. Toby traced the edge of the design with one finger, careful, reverent. I want this part to feel like light breaking through storm. You good with that? It's the only ending that makes sense. The needle hummed to life, low and constant, a heartbeat given metal. Megan closed her eyes as it touched skin. The pain was still there, but it wasn't punishment anymore, it was proof. Every line etched what words couldn't hold, her defiance, her faith, her choosing. They worked through the sunrise, through the sound of fishermen loading nets and the harbor waking to gossip. Toby's focus never faltered. Her wrist moved in elegant, confident arcs, every stroke deliberate. Megan watched her when she could, how concentration transformed her face, how tenderness hid inside her precision. When Toby finally shut off the machine, silence poured into the room like a benediction. Look, she said. Megan turned toward the mirror. The full sleeve gleamed black and silver under the light, ferns curling into waves, a storm-lashed lighthouse splitting through clouds, swifts scattering upward into constellations. It wasn't just a tattoo, it was a map of becoming. Oh, she breathed. Toby, it's yours, Toby finished. All yours. Megan touched the edge of the bandage gently. I thought I'd feel smaller after losing him. But I don't. Because you didn't lose yourself this time. Megan turned to her, tears spilling freely now. Thank you. Toby wiped her gloves clean and smiled, weary but radiant. You don't thank someone for witnessing you. Megan hesitated, then leaned forward and kissed her. Slow. Certain. It wasn't the feverish defiance of before, it was belonging, simple and sacred. Toby's hand slid to her waist, steadying her as if to say yes, this is real. When they parted, Megan whispered, You've ruined church for me. Good, Toby murmured. You'll stop confusing silence with holiness. They left the shop together when the sun climbed higher, painting the town in soft gold. Harbor Street was already waking, the bakery door propped open, fishermen haggling over bait, Mrs. Klein's car nosing out from behind the chapel. Megan half expected gasps or whispers, but no one looked twice. She rolled her sleeve up as she walked, letting the ink catch the light. The gulls cried above them, sharp and wild. Toby reached over, brushing her fingers along Megan's wrist. You're not hiding anymore. Neither are you, Megan said. Toby smiled, eyes crinkling. You think this place will forgive us? Maybe it doesn't have to. They reached the edge of the dock, where the water lapped softly against the pilings. The church spire rose in the distance, and for the first time, Megan didn't feel it watching her. The sea, though, it seemed to notice. It shimmered with something like approval. I want to leave someday, Megan said. See cities that don't care who I'm supposed to be. You will. And you? Toby looked out over the waves. I came here to disappear. Now I think I came here to find you. Megan laughed, quiet and shaky. That sounds dangerously close to faith. Yeah, Toby said, slipping her arm around her shoulders. Let's call it that. They stood there until the tide started to rise, waves climbing the dock like forgiveness. The lighthouse beam, real and inked, met somewhere between sea and skin. For the first time in her life, Megan Lowe wasn't the pastor's daughter. She was just a girl in love, in ink, in the salt-soaked light of her own choosing. And that was holy enough. The end. I truly hope you enjoyed this story. If you'd like to hear more sweet sapphic romance like this, subscribe to my channel.